Morning, everyone. Huge warm welcome to BITC's Cost of Living Supporting Employees event. I'm going slow just while people are filtering in and kind of making their way through the online door. Huge warm welcome. So I'm Emma and I'm the head of Cost of Living here at BITC. We are live and we are recording. I just want to share kind of a little bit about the campaign, what to expect today, and then a kind of a brief introduction to our speakers. So the Cost of Living campaign here at BITC is built on our 40 years of experience of supporting responsible business across the whole spectrum of social, planet, and really drawing from all of that, how we respond right now in the cost of living crisis to support employees, customers, communities, and suppliers. So this event is all about people, the people that are making everything happen, these systems that are experiencing this crisis, the kind of second big national crisis in the last 3 years. The data is quite shocking and saddening, really, the impact it's having on people. We know that 44% of people are struggling to make ends meet at the moment. So especially as we go towards the winter months, having leading employers here today to share what they're doing, how they're helping, and is kind of really, really important. So we'll start off with a panel discussion, and we'll be led by Cormac. So you can see that his camera is on now. Cormac Healy, our campaign manager here at BITC, will be facilitating that panel discussion. On our panel, we have Julia Diggs, Director of People Experience at OVO. We're really honoured to be joined by you, Julia. We have Sam Patel, Assistant Vice President, Enterprise Rent-A-Car of Rental. Enterprise Rent-A-Car sit across many of our BITC leadership teams, so a real force for good and responsible business. A smaller organisation, Crowd Helix, Michael Brown should be joining us as well for that panel. And then in terms of one of the things that we're really calling for as part of this campaign is to pay the living wage. So again, we are absolutely delighted to be joined by Gail Irvine, Living Wage Foundation, Head of Development and Policy at the Living Wage Foundation. So I just wonder if the speakers wouldn't mind putting your cameras on now just to wave hello. Hi, good to see you all, and I will kind of we'll segue now into Cormac and the panel, and then later on we'll hear from Gail. Please do post your questions in the chat as they come to you. This is a real kind of opportunity to hear from those employers on how to better support employees. Thanks again, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks very much, Emma, and good morning, everyone. As Emma said, my name is Cormac Healy. I'm a campaign manager here at Business in the Community, and have the pleasure today of hosting this panel discussion from some of our BITC members about what they've been doing to support their employees during the cost of living crisis. So what I'll do is we've got a bunch of questions that I think will really help to highlight the amazing work that these organizations are doing. But I would encourage attendees, if you have your own questions or thoughts, or are looking for more information on anything that one of our panel speakers says, please do use the chat function, and I'll make sure to segue that into the conversation. So I think we'll start with Julia Diggs, Director of People Experience at OVO. Good morning, Julia. First question for you is, how did you and your organization initially respond to the cost of living crisis when you're supporting your employees?
Morning, Cormac, and morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here, and I appreciate you all listening to some of the things that we've done. So on your question, Cormac, I think, you know, for us, of course, we had to make sure that we tackled both how we supported our customers as well as supporting our people. And key for us was making sure that the help went to our people who needed it the most. We had a really multi-pronged approach, knowing that this was about financial support, but not just about financial support for our people. It was also about emotional support and additional support for those in the front line who really were having to have conversations on a day-to-day basis, hour to hour, minute to minute, with many vulnerable customers. But first and foremost for us, in terms of thinking about how we were going to tackle this, was thinking about what we were doing from a pay point of view. Walking into sort of a pay review and pay conversations with our unions as well. And we initiated a conversation to make sure that we had a cost of living focus for our pay, and we did so for 22 and 23. And in effect for us, it was thinking about how can we give some immediate support through one-off payments, but also thinking about how we looked from an affordability lens, how we look to manage the budgets, really focusing and giving higher amounts and higher percentages to those who needed it the most, those who were the lower paid for us. And so what we offered was a tiered approach to increases, and alongside that, 3 one-off payments that occurred between September 22 and March 23. Another approach that we took was around well-being, and I'm sure this is something that everybody was on top of everyone's minds. You know, financial struggles hit well-being in every single space, so it's very much a holistic approach to well-being. And what we did is we set up what I call a very rapid squad to think about how we were going to support our people. So we got folks from around the business and ran several ideation sessions to really get a view of the ideas that people had, what they felt they needed. We ran those through very fast sprints to think about the art of the possible, played it through with our leadership teams. What that culminated in really was a review of and a relaunch of our wellbeing approach and a new wellbeing hub. And the thing about this wellbeing hub was much more about how do we make sure that all of our people could get access to the help that they needed as quickly as possible. So rather than talking about, you know, the providers, Bupa or Health Assured or whoever else we had, we focused the hub on what help do you need? Are you struggling with financial challenges? Are you not feeling well? Are you struggling with your physical health or your mental health? And linking them through to the providers that way. And we found that it was a much better way for our people to understand what we currently had and what we had on offer. Alongside that, we ran some financial debt webinars for our people, and one-on-one financial support conversations were part of that, run by an external provider. And we also gave our people at the front line more space and time if they needed it, through those stressful points. So giving them better access to our wellbeing support, including our mental health first aiders, and also training our people leaders as to how to spot any stress signs or triggers so that they could put the help and support in place as well. And the third thing that we did was actually directly with our frontline, talking to and they said to us, give us the answers. So what we did is we ran a winter training program. We supported them and helped them through thinking about how they focus their empathy. We always do empathy training, but just a reminder, and also just real-time basis information as and when things change, because there's quite a lot of complexity in our industry. And alongside that, we gave, as I said, dedicated training and support to our people leaders who were really key to be able to spot this. And the final thing I will say is what we did throughout this time is continued moments of connection, supporting everybody together, recognizing how hard things were, but also celebrating the amazing things that our people were doing to support our customers, something we called Customer Heroes. On a monthly basis at our organization town halls, we celebrated what they did, what they were doing, and how hard they were working.
Great, thanks, Julie. I think it's very interesting the breadth of the offer that OVO came, and also recognizing that your employees and your other stakeholders, customers, how connected all of those were. That's really, really useful. Thanks very much, Julia. We'll pass on now to Michael Brown, CEO of CrowdHelix. Michael, the first question, same as Julia, is how did you and your organization initially respond to the cost of living crisis to support your employees?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Just to check, can you hear me okay, yeah?
Yes.
Yep, cool. So yeah, just a very brief introduction to CrowdHelix. So we are a network and technology platform that connects scientists and businesses to come together to collaborate and innovate on large-scale innovation projects across different disciplines, sectors, and regions. And I think if we go back a couple of years ago, the company's been around for about 5 years, and sort of as a startup 5 years ago, we were growing and emerging as a company. And then I think about when the cost of living crisis kicked in, probably obviously we had COVID, and then we've had the cost of living crisis. We're obviously at the same time trying to grow the company. We were trying to put it into scale up mode, having both of these things. They're kind of loggerheads, really. They're kind of conflicts. So how could we address that? We also realized that retention of excellent people, making sure that we're looking after our staff, was paramount for where we wanted to go as a company. And we also recognized that as a startup, translating into a scale up, it was difficult for us to really compete with the big companies particularly the big tech companies that were providing much higher salaries. Even public sector salaries for similar jobs were higher than what we could offer at that stage. So we made a decision at company level, at senior management team level, that we would not take salary increases at leadership team for a period going forward, but that we would honour a 10% increase on all other staff, blanket across the company at that stage. We also wanted to recognise the excellent work that everyone was doing, and that wanted to retain them, and that actually went down very, very well, because I don't think many people, if any, really was expecting us to do that as a company. So that had a really positive impact, and has helped us to grow the company, retain excellent staff. I think since doing that, we've doubled in size, so we've been able to kind of continue our trajectory during what is obviously quite challenging times. Additionally, something we set up in the last sort of 18 months or so, well, a year and a half, is a culture and a wellbeing group, where we would bring people together to talk about the culture of the company, share any concerns or issues or things that we need to potentially address at company level. And we deliberately form that group from representatives from all parts of the company, from different levels and different divisions as well, and that's proved to be very influential and informative, a group of people and thoughts, and we've implemented a number of cool ideas around that at company level as well going forward. And I think as a company, as we've been growing, we've also kind of the transition from being a kind of physical company, been physically in offices. So we're currently based in the UK, and as a legal entity, and also in Ireland. And that was, we were trying, if we go back sort of COVID and coming out of COVID, trying to push everyone back to work in the offices. We realized that actually maybe that might not be desirable for everyone. People could do their jobs just as well, potentially even better, by working remotely. So we took a very kind of relax in a professional way approach to how, where people wanted to work, and we realized that also by doing so, this would also help people with regards to their salary as well. So in terms of paying to get to work, traveling into London, for example, 5 days a week, if you're living in and out, in the suburbs or surrounding counties, is actually quite expensive. And I think giving people the option to work from home a number of days a week reduces the cost and can help towards payments with regards to the cost of living challenges that we face today. So these were the main points. We also obviously did some social check-ins as well, sort of social breaks, coffee breaks, and encourage people to try and talk about things socially, but also any other challenges that they may be facing. We then sort of review them monthly at our SMT meeting, and obviously decide on any aspects that we wish to take forward periodically. So yeah, these are the updates from our side at CrowdHelix. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Michael. And if I could just ask a quick follow-up question there. With the culture and wellbeing groups and those social get-togethers, was that the decision to implement them, did that come from a top-down decision from senior management, or is it something you're hearing from your employees? What was the balance?
I think the initial idea was one sort of at SMT level, because we were growing. So the idea to set up the group itself was at the top, because we felt that as a company that was growing and scaling, sort of doubling in size, and obviously being now moving from physical to remote, it's really important to try and secure, maintain, and embrace a positive culture within the company, and make sure that people are okay as well. And we felt that we needed to actually have this as a dedicated pillar within our company strategy that cuts across all of the areas that we're focused on. So we decided at senior management team to do that. And then, but once we'd done that, we realized that actually it's culture and well-being of the company has to come from everyone across the company ultimately. So the actual wants to design of the idea and was confirmed at SMT level. We then wanted to make sure that the representation and the feedback that we received from it was from across the whole company, and obviously the group itself has representatives from across the company, different levels, different divisions as well. And it's really important for us to get a snapshot of like the cross section of CrowdHelix, not just like one part of it or one senior part of it. So and then those feedbacks reports are presented to SMT periodically, and then we take those into account, and then we review which ones we would like to take forward and sort of try to address at company level.
Great. I think, that sort of level of detail is really useful. Thanks, Michael. And I'll pass on to our third speaker, certainly not least. We have Sam Patel, who is Assistant Vice President of Rental at Enterprise Rent a Car. Sam, same question to start things off for you. How did you and your organisation initially respond to the cost of living crisis in supporting your employees?
Thanks, Cormac. Morning, all. Again, very quick introduction to who we are. So Enterprise Rent a Car, we are a car rental company. There's three very critical parts in terms of the mission to our company: to be the best transportation service provider in the world, to exceed our customers' expectations for service quality and value, and most importantly, to make sure we provide to our employees a great place to work. We have around 5,500 people in the UK that we employ. And that split is really 60% of those are based in our branches in the neighborhoods, and 40% of those employees and people are based in sort of admin and support functions across the business. So a lot of sort of what I'm going to say, and there's a lot of things Julia and Michael have both touched on. I won't go into huge amounts of detail there that were critically important to us. But when the company started, we are a privately held company, and we've been going for just over 65 years. And the founder, Jack Taylor, had a very simple philosophy, and it was take care of customers and employees first, and everything else will follow. And that very much is in the DNA of who we are and everything we do over the last 65 years. And there's been a huge number of sort of economic challenges throughout the period we've operated in. And again, just reverting back to that has really meant we've got the right measures in place. So when the cost of living crisis, and like Michael mentioned, right, that came straight off the back of the pandemic, which was a very difficult time for all of our employees as well. We already had to start considering the impact that was going to mean on our people. This was like something we haven't seen in a long, long time. And number one piece was we needed to make sure we were there ready and able to support them through that. So there was a series of meetings from a senior leadership point of view in terms of what was the best path forward, what is going to provide the best support to our employees, be that financially and from a support perspective. And what we ended on was we did a cost of living adjustment. It was sort of towards the back end of last year. And that was for all of our salary-based employees. We have a combination of employees, either salary-based or salary and commission. But I think Julia mentioned it, the hardest hit employees were those purely on a salary base. And that cost of living adjustment we made was a 5% increase in everyone's salary. And that was a permanent adjustment that will stay with people. And we thought that was the best approach versus the bonus approach here. We made sure there was strong communication across the line management team to understand what we were doing, to make sure that communication then filtered down to our employees. And we decided to do it in September and communicate it in September, but we backdated it to August, which was the start of our financial year. And that was just because of the timescale it took to make sure we had the right communications in place as well. We're consistently reviewing pay policy that we've got in place. We benchmark every single year. We actually purchase pay data from an industry point of view and across various industries, just to make sure that we are paying competitively. It's critical we keep our people, we have engaged people in the business. So that's something that we will continue doing on an annual basis as well. And then Julia and Michael both touched on it, right? Just paying people more money isn't going to be ultimately the fix to this. There is mental well-being support, financial well-being support. We have an employee assistance program, which there's a huge amount of resource and support available to our employees, but we needed to make sure as well, it wasn't just our employees, it was our management levels as well, that were sort of synced into this, were close to their employees, understood the challenges they faced, and we provided support for them to be able to help our employees and signpost our employees in the right way. And then lastly, a big part, again, we have a strong promotion from within culture. So again, that's why retention, engagement, development is so critical to us as a business. And there is a huge amount of opportunities for progression. And again, just making sure all of our employees understand what's available to them from a progression point of view, continuing to develop and build their careers. And again, along with that, sort of compensation does move up as they do that. So there's a number of people in our business, be that females, be that minorities, that aren't always the first to put their hands up to promotion. So we're doing a lot around making sure those groups of people are confident, comfortable, and making sure they're at the table when it comes to furthering their careers as well.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Sam. I think, yeah, one key theme that's emerging across all three speakers is that this pay is obviously a critical issue and is a big part of this, but there are other aspects that need to be considered in terms of supporting your employees. And I guess a follow-up question, Sam, would be, now that the cost of living crisis is entering its second year, it's becoming, you know, quite a constant feature, it feels like. Is there other things that you're considering now that sort of initial shock and reaction has passed, in terms of how you as an organization are responding?
Sorry, my lights just turned off. Be 1 minute.
Yeah.
It should come on. Yeah, for sure, 100%. Just because what we've done over the course of the last sort of 12 months, that isn't going to stop. We've got to make sure we're continuing to listen to our people, stay abreast of sort of the continued economic pressures and challenges that are still to come. In terms of what I mentioned, the benchmarking is really important to us. We do that annually. We've got to make sure we are paying people competitively and the right amount from a pay perspective. And there's also an opportunity, if employees do feel from a pay perspective it isn't in the right spot, that they can raise their hands, they can have that conversation with their line manager, and we will review those from an ad hoc basis as well. Every year we carry out a employee opinion survey. It's called Your Voice Counts, and that really allows us to continue to get open and honest feedback, and really understand what the biggest challenges for our people are and what they need the most as well. And off the back of that, there's a number of workshops, a number of things from an action point of view that we put into place as well. Two things really. One that we're looking at from a financial well-being point of view is salary sacrifice. We haven't made a full decision on that yet, but it's something we are exploring right now to really continue to provide additional financial support and well-being to our employees. And then we do a lot as a company today, and I don't think we do a great job in actually promoting all the benefits and schemes that we've got out there. A number of sort of healthcare, dental plans, free eye tests through Specsavers, a huge amount of discounts for staycations, for motor insurance, gift cards where there's good discounts across a large number of high street stores that people shop in daily, weekly, monthly, etc. So we know we need to do a better job in that space, not one email a year and thinking people are fully aware of that off the back of that. So we've got a better plan in place for those things. Some of the big things, one of the biggest structural changes we've probably made, which ties into flexibility for our employees. Our offices were open from 8 till 6, the branch network. And again, we're there to support customers when they need them and break down, etc. But that normally meant they'd work till 7 sometimes by the time they finished. And we made a decision, again, this was at the back end of last year, to move our opening times from 8 to 6 to 8 to 5. So from a business point of view, there clearly was an impact in terms of not being available and open to our customers for that 1 extra hour throughout the week. But it was really important, and the feedback we were hearing from our teams was that work-life balance was more important. And the senior leadership team at the end of it decided and considered the business impact and the missed sort of opportunity cost, but ultimately the value it brought to our people and the flexibility it brought to our people meant that we've changed our opening hours from 8 to 6 to 8 to 5. And as a result of that, we've seen the best engagement and record levels of retention right now over the last sort of 12 months as a business. So yeah, it's clearly done wonders for us.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful example, Sam, of sort of looking at the business case, considering financial impact and realizing that the value your employees bring is greater than that. And I think that's certainly a useful example for other organizations as well. Michael, if we come to you, similar sort of question now that the cost of living is entering its second year, are there sort of more permanent structural changes you're looking at as an organization, or anything additional Crowd Helix are doing?
Yeah, so we're looking at, so I think, yeah, completely agree with previous comments around, just paying extra money is nice, but it's, it's not the only solution. There has to be other responses from companies and organizations to address this, in my view. I like the idea of the survey that was suggested by the previous speaker, but I think for us, we've done this, we did this earlier on in the year. The challenge for us is that because we're still quite a small company, sending out a survey, even though you say it's anonymous, people are, I sense people are still a little bit kind of dubious as to being, that's our, we feel that people are maybe a little bit scared or to be totally honest and open about how they feel. So that's kind of has limited, but we'll see how that goes. We'll do it again anyway this year and see how that goes. I think meeting up regularly, face to face, is crucially important. I think since we've given staff the option to work from home and work remotely, and also to be agile around their working hours, people have really embraced that, and they've completely gone in that direction, which is great. And the work and commitment to the business has, we haven't seen in any way that been negatively impacted. In fact, it's been more positively impacted on the business. But that kind of growth or expansion towards remote working and agile working is great for each individual, potentially great for each individual on a day-to-day basis. But then from a company collective, feeling part of a company, feeling part of the culture, this does, I think, this is then at risk. So we really try to bring people together regularly where we can. The challenge for us is that as we've grown as a company, so the original business model we had when we were a UK company was that people could, the recruits would only be in the UK and ideally in and around London. Then we expanded that to anywhere in the UK, and then we opened up an office in Ireland, and then we now have the option that it can actually be anywhere in the EU. So people have flexibility on where they can work from literally anywhere in the Eurozone, and that gives a lot of flexibility and freedom, and that also impacts on the costs as well, because there are quite a lot of other places that are perhaps more cost effective or cheaper to live in and to work from than the UK, especially in and around London. But one of the things that we do, so we did actually just 2 weeks ago, is we bring all of the company together at least once a year for 2 days. And this isn't, we do, I'd say 20% of it's sort of strategy and work. I'd say 70-80% of it's fun, really. So it's just bringing people together. So we went to Amsterdam 2 weeks ago. We did nice meals, we went on some tours of Amsterdam, we did some networking and team building activities, boat rides and stuff like that. And it was excellent. It was really great for people to come together, felt part of a meeting face to face. There were like about a third of the company that hadn't yet met face to face. So we're going to be doing more of that going forward this year and next year. And we actually feel that that's just as powerful, possibly even more powerful than just the money factor of just increasing people's pay, because then they actually feel part of a company, and obviously then having the freedom and flexibility to work in different geographical regions, and also different flexibility around the time of their work, if they want flexibility if they're a parent or if they have commitments on a particular day. I think this is just as important for our staff, and I think for others too.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to be creative and look at different ideas in terms of engaging employees, especially considering the remote working that a lot of us are experiencing. I think that's a really good example. Thanks very much, Michael. And we'll pass to Julia now. Julia, same sort of broad question around, now that this I hate the phrase new normal, but that's kind of what it feels like it's become. Is there, as an organization, long-term structural changes you're looking at, additional measures, and anything that you'd like to highlight that your organization's doing?
Sure, thanks, Cormac. I think for us during the last 2 years, our engagement score has gone up quite significantly from 7.1 to 8.2. We've also won some awards, Sunday Times Best Place to Work for Women, top 10 Best Place to Work in the larger category. So for us, it's about continuing to promote and keep the momentum going, to make sure that we're always building an inclusive culture and involving our people in the discussions. We are now running regular Ask the People team sessions, which is the whole of the people team, whole of the organization just comes together. They can ask us anything they want. Obviously, there's regular conversations around pay, support from a cost of living perspective, as well as a number of other things. So for us, the continued conversation is really important, but then acting on that feedback. As an organization, we're really still, continue to be focused on our well-being, but also our, and Michael and Sam talked about this, but flexible working policy is key for us. So our flexible working policy allows our folk to adapt and change. It gives them greater autonomy, but alongside that, making sure, as Michael talked about, building in our connection events, because the other thing that we've heard is some folk have felt incredibly lonely, not just through COVID, but through the cost of living crisis, and enabling them to talk about that in safe spaces by using our belonging networks. We've got 8 belonging networks, one of them being our Mind network, and we've increased actually tripled the number of our mental health first aiders in over this period of time, so that they know that they can go and speak to people safely, and actually just talk about some of these things, so that they feel that they can open up, and also we can offer support. So for us, it's about increasing the momentum, but also what I would call out is something that Sam said, which is leveraging what you currently have and working with our providers. So recently we launched a new wellbeing app that was available through one of our benefits providers. free of charge. It was just an add-on that they had. So the continual conversation with our providers, what they have to offer, what are the new things that they're talking about, and making sure that we give all of our people access to that is also incredibly important. The final thing that we will continue to do is offer our flex pay. So we have a flex fund that you can buy benefits with, but that flex pay can be flex. You can either buy benefits or take it as cash. And that's something that's been quite welcome from our people during these challenges too. So that's it for me. I think continuing the momentum and making sure that we're leveraging everything that we have and promoting everything that we have, as well as listening to our people to see whether we can enhance.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Julia. And just we're coming to the end of our time here with the panel, so I'm just going to go to each of you in turn with one sort of closing thought, if that's all right. Just with the 3 calls to action that the BITC cost of living team have come up with, which are just to remind everyone to pay the real living wage to employees and contractors, ensure employees have the option to work flexibly, and to target support towards your lower income and vulnerable employees using workforce data. Julia, any final thoughts, or what advice would you give to the other businesses that are here on this call in terms of how they can best support their employees?
So I think I covered off some of that, and I'll repeat it again now. But I think the first thing is making sure that, you know, we're inclusive. If you have belonging networks, working with your networks to make sure that we're reaching everyone that we need to as we're having this conversation. Continue the conversation. Ask what's working, what's not. I think be open to feedback, but also be open in terms of your own challenges that you've got. So continue the conversation, create an element of engagement and connection so that people feel that they're safe to have these conversations, but also point them to the right resources, and give as much flexibility as you can. So flexibility in your packages, but flexibility in terms of making sure that you're supporting your people from an individual perspective, as well as from an organizational perspective. The last thing I would say is don't spend more than you can afford, but make sure what you're giving is giving to those who need it the most.
Great, thanks, Julia. I think that idea of continuing the conversation, I mean, these situations, they flex and they change as we go. So that idea of being constantly looking to carry on that conversation, I think is really, really powerful. Michael, same question to you. Anything that you would want to highlight or bits of advice you'd give to the other businesses on the call?
Yeah, I'd say obviously pay is important, making sure that it's real, it's competitive, and not just for us, not just in the UK, but also geographically as well across Europe, because we have a number of employees from who about a third of our workforce now is outside of the UK and Ireland. So making sure that we're fair across the company. With regards to pay, and also ideally for us competitive as well. Engagement from staff, so making sure that staff feel empowered to be able to feed their views across and up and down within the company in an environment about what they feel works and what perhaps doesn't work. And also I think culture as well, just trying to make sure people feel that they're part of the company's culture, what we stand for, what we're trying to deliver, and hopefully that they truly believe in our mission or purpose. And by doing so, I truly believe if they truly buy into that, you know, and I believe what we're doing is truly impactful and game changing in terms of impact across society and industries, then that's a big deal. That's a big deal for employees, and that can be a real incentive for them to feel valued on our company's mission and in what we do, both as a company and in the real world as well.
Great, yeah, I completely agree with that power of culture. Sam, final words to you. Any final thoughts?
Julia and Michael have summarised it really well. I think it's critical to just stay close to your employees, really making sure you're encouraging your employees to be open and honest in those conversations. So as an employer, we can provide the best support as we physically can. Making sure as a company you are open and transparent yourself as well in how you communicate to your employees in terms of what we can do from a support point of view as well. But no, there isn't a lot. There's been a lot of good points on here in terms of how to help support employees. I think awareness and education are two important parts, but action is also a real thing at the end of it all.
Great, thanks, Sam. And thanks again to all three of our speakers. We've got Sam Patel from Enterprise, Michael Brown from CrowdHelix, and Julia Diggs from Ovo. Thanks to all three of you. And I'll pass back now to Emma.
Thanks to you, to Cormac, along with our speakers. Thanks so much. It was really, I felt like that panel brought to life our calls to action. You know, we talk about flexibility and that very real example of people that are working in enterprise rent a car, and then the kind of shift in those hours to recognise the positive implications of work-life balance was really wonderful. The remote working from CrowdHelix and more so kind of beyond the UK, targeting disproportionately impacted people through progression, another really powerful example that aligns to another call to action we have. And then I particularly like, Julia, your reflections on creating that culture of belonging, listening, but then also recognising a lot of the work that we're doing within supporting employees and people strategy can be repurposed and channeled into the support needed for the cost of living crisis. So a lot of themes as well on pay, which is a really kind of timely moment to hand over to Gail, one of the leading charities working in this space. Over to you, Gail. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Emma. Good morning, everyone. It's really good to be here. I do have some slides for this segment, so if it's okay, Annette, just pull those up. Thank you. And hopefully those will start showing in a second. Great, thank you. So the key thing I'm going to talk about really today, just to finish up this really interesting session, is first of all, what is the real living wage and why is it a key thing that you can do to support your people during the cost of living crisis? And I'm going to speak a little bit about the impact that being paid the living wage has on employees, the difference it makes to them, and also a little bit about what motivates employers to become living wage accredited and what are the business benefits that they cite, that they see once they do so. I'm also going to finish by saying a little bit about some of our other projects and ways of working with employers, in case some of you want to go further, because as all the speakers were just saying, it's not always just about pay. You need that basic hierarchy of needs, but there are many other areas of action to support people during the cost of living crisis. So I'll say a little bit about living wage, living hours, and living pensions this morning. Next slide, please. I'm just going to start off with a little bit of history and just clarification of what the living wage is. So the Living Wage campaign is over 20 years old in the UK. It started with low-paid workers in the East End of London, many of whom were working multiple minimum wage jobs, trying to make ends meet, not seeing their families really struggling. And they came together in a community organising group and called on their employers to go beyond the statutory minimum wage and pay a real living wage. Because of course, in the UK, we do have a national minimum wage floor, in law, which is great. It's great to have that legal floor below which no one should fall. But the problem that we have is that the national minimum wage is not calculated based on what it actually costs to live. Next slide, please. By way of contrast, the real living wage rate is the only rate independently calculated on an annual basis, adjusted on an annual basis, based on the real costs of living. And the way it's calculated, it's based on a basket of goods and services, which is what this graphic's meant to illustrate, of some of the absolute essentials of life. So the cost of rent, the cost of food, the cost of the commute, the cost of buying children's clothes and toys and things like that. It's calculated by the Living Wage Commission, and academics do a lot of the work behind it at the Resolution Foundation and also Loughborough University. Next slide, please. As I say, the real living wage is adjusted annually in line with the cost of living, and at the moment it is £10.90 an hourly rate across the UK, and it's a higher rate in London to account for the historically dramatically higher living costs there. So it's £11.95 for employees in London. Next slide, please. So I talked about our origins 20 years ago in the East End of London. The movement has grown hugely since then. And over that time, we've put £2.1 billion in additional wages into the pockets of low-paid workers. And we're now in a position where actually 1 in 9 workers in the UK work for a living wage accredited employer. So that's really a fantastic thing for us to be able to say that this movement that started in our community hall in London has now grown to a movement of over 13,000 accredited living wage employers in the UK. Next slide, please. So yeah, we're really proud of what we've achieved and how we've grown. It's also worth saying that the movement of employers has actually doubled in the last couple of years since the pandemic, which is amazing. I think that represents the real appetite employers have to try and do the right thing by the workers and support them during all these crises we've seen. But the sad truth is that at the moment, the living wage campaign is more relevant and more needed than ever. It's always been hard to make ends meet on a minimum wage in the UK because the cost of living has always been an issue, but it's clearly much more acute now. And we're still in a situation where 3.5 million employees in the UK earn below the real living wage. We carried out some polling last autumn, which showed that 78% of workers say this is the worst period for their finances they have ever faced. And that 54% of workers earning below the real living wage have had to turn to a food bank in the last 12 months. So it's a really depressing and difficult state of affairs. So we know we still need to do more. And we're really grateful for the employers that see that too and are part of supporting this movement. Next slide, please. The real living wage makes a big difference. We hear all the time from the workers that are working for a living wage accredited employer about the difference it makes to them. But we also did some interesting, carried out some research last year, speaking to workers paid below the real living wage, asking what difference they think it would make. And 67% said that being paid the real living wage would improve their overall happiness. 66% said they would be likely to stay with their current employer for longer. And 63% said they thought that a real living wage would improve their family life and their mental health. So it really, I think that those findings kind of reflect it's not just the monetary value. That's obviously really helpful to help people make ends meet, but it's also a sense of being valued by their employer because their employer is going beyond the legal minimum to pay a wage in line with the cost of living. Next slide, please. As I said, we do hear from workers all the time about the difference the real living wage makes, but I just wanted to draw out one quotation that we have from Helen, who works for a cleaning company. And she says, the living wage makes the difference between existing and having a life. And that is a theme we hear all the time. She told us that she used to have to duct tape my shoes back together. Now I can buy new shoes. I was working, but I couldn't pay for any heating in my flat. My glass of water would freeze overnight. I would get myself invited around for dinner at people's houses 5 nights a week because I couldn't afford my food. I was embarrassed to tell people why. Being paid the living wage means I can afford food, have people around, have a social life. If you are working, you should be able to afford a life. And that is absolutely what motivates our campaign. You shouldn't be working and not able to afford a basic, decent standard of living. Next slide, please. I wanted to just say a little bit about the motives of employers who pay the real living wage and become real living wage accredited. It is really interesting because obviously there's lots of considerations that feed into that decision, but the absolute overwhelming thing we hear from employers is they want to do it because they think it's the right thing to do. 98% of the employers we surveyed said that an important driving factor in becoming living wage accredited is that it matches their values and it helps them demonstrate social responsibility. 94% support the living wage campaign and want to be seen as a good employer. But what is really interesting to us is that we also hear from employers that they're motivated by this moral case and they want to do the right thing by their workers. But they also say that being able to point to a business case really helps sell this idea internally. It helps to get sustained commitment from their organisation to being a living wage employer. So the good thing is that there are actually many business benefits that are seen from paying the real living wage. 94% of our employers surveyed say that they saw some business benefits. Next slide, please. And on this slide, I've just drawn out a few of the benefits which employers cite. So 87% said that it enhanced their reputation as an employer. 64% said it helped to improve relations between staff and managers. 60% said it helped improve the retention of living wage paid employees. And 62% said it helped them improve their recruitment at that level. while 66% of businesses said it's helped differentiate them from their competitors. Next slide, please. So I've talked a lot about the living wage, but I did want to spend a couple of minutes talking about some of our other projects and employer accreditations at the Living Wage Foundation, because many of the employers here might already be paying the living wage, and you want to think about what else can you do. There are ways to go further. The speakers spoke earlier, had lots of great ideas for initiatives to help people with the cost of living, but we also do have 2 employer accreditations which sit alongside the living wage, which I'd like to talk through now. So first of all, living hours is absolutely the other side of the coin when it comes to helping people meet the cost of living. It's only a living wage if you have enough hours, if you have sufficient hours and also predictable hours. And this is a big problem. There has been a big increase in different forms of insecure work in the UK since the financial crisis over 10 years ago. 6.1 million workers in the UK are in some form of insecure work. And it's really the main concern for us is people that are in low paid insecure work. Incredibly volatile and difficult way to be trying to earn a living. 55% of low paid workers are in insecure work, and that compares to only about 1 in 10 of those earning above the real living wage. A lot of it is about having a contract that is sufficient, but one part of the problem is also really variable working hours across the week. So our research shows that almost 60% of workers on variable hours contracts get less than 1 week's notice of their shifts. So that makes it incredibly difficult to plan your life and your finances. But we also found in our research that these people are forking out on average £600 extra a year on the cost of last minute travel to work and arranging childcare. Next slide, please. So that's why we introduced the Living Hours accreditation, and that has 3 key elements. One is a decent notice period for shifts. We say of at least 4 weeks. We say a contract that accurately reflects the hours you work after a qualifying period, and a guaranteed minimum contract of 16 hours a week for workers, unless the employee requests fewer. There is an opt-out mechanism because, of course, some people do want to work less than that. That works for them. But what Living Hours is about is a new voluntary initiative for employers who want to make sure what they're offering is genuine 2-sided flexibility at work and not 1-sided flexibility, where the workers bear all the costs of that. Next slide, please. I just wanted to finish by saying a little bit about Living Pension, which is another amazing way that employers can go further and help their people save for a decent standard of living in retirement. We just launched the Living Pension accreditation back in May, and it's a really important one because what is really sad is people are facing terrible decisions right now between heating and eating, trying to scrape together a living. But today's cost of living crisis is also tomorrow's pensions crisis. The stats in this regard are actually quite terrifying. We found that at the moment, 4 in 5 workers are not saving enough for a basic decent standard of living in retirement. And 99% of lowest paid workers are not saving enough. The cost of living crisis is making that worse. Almost 1 in 10 of workers that we surveyed say that they've cut or stopped their pension contributions in the last 6 months, with over half saying that's due to the cost of living crisis. They're just trying to cut back wherever they can. Next slide, please. So the Living Pension is basically a new voluntary employer scheme for employers who want to go beyond auto-enrolment minimums, and it's about offering a pension at 12% of salary, of which the employer pays 7%. There's also a cash target of £2,550. That's what 12% of a living wage salary is. And this is the Living Pensions project. We really want to make sure this is helping the lowest paid workers, but actually, as the stats I just showed you demonstrate, all workers could benefit from this. It's not just a problem on low incomes. No one is saving enough for a pension. So responsible employers can take a step to make sure they're providing a market-leading pensions offer and supporting their people for retirement as well. Next slide, please. I think that's me just about drawing to a close. I know that's a huge amount of information and a bit of a whiz through of the different initiatives that we're working on. But I really just wanted to end by saying these are all food for thought. There's lots of things you can do, but certainly from our point of view, as a baseline, paying the real living wage is the #1 thing you can do to support your lowest paid workers with the cost of living crisis. But really happy to answer any questions and get in touch to discuss any of these projects that we're working on. Thank you. that's enough of the slides. We can put those away now. Thank you, Annette.
Gail, thank you so much. That was an incredibly powerful moral and business case, and you can see in the chat Anita commented that these stats are impressive and will have enhanced many lives. This is a key call to action for us in our cost of living campaign, so thank you so much for joining us, sharing and bringing it to our network and the organisations that we have here today. So we've got just a couple of minutes left. The chat's it's been really good to see the kind of comments that have been coming through, various different comments. I think that you've all done a great job of responding to each other and sharing kind of within your own knowledge within our network, which is fantastic. There's one question I think that might not have been touched on, so I just want to invite all of the speakers. I don't think we have time to ask you all to respond, but anyone that is particularly interested in this one, it will be wonderful. I just wondered if you could put your cameras on, speakers. So financial, we talked a little bit about debt, and one of the questions was around financial struggles. Have you seen anything within your own organisations on how employees are responding and if they're coming forward? Is there anything kind of on that with the levels of disclosure that you're seeing, anything that you can build, share around how you might be helping employees to seek the support that they need?
I can talk a little bit to OVO. So what I would say is we have 8 very strong belonging networks, and what we find is that folks who are members of those belonging networks find that they're a safe space to have the conversation. So where we have people coming forward, they're often via the belonging networks and or going to our mental health first aiders. So that's where the conversations tend to happen. What we also have done, so we don't ask, but we just want to make sure that, you know, that everything is provided. What we also do is make sure that our leaders know how to give their people the right access to the right things at the right time as well, whether that's conversation that starts with pay or not. But I would say I think it's the conversations I've had with some of the belonging networks is that there is an element of guilt, embarrassment, not wanting to have those conversations. I think that continues to exist, but we try and open it up in smaller forums where people feel that it's safer to have those conversations.
That's so helpful, Julia. Thank you so much. So we're coming to the end of our time together. Thank you for your questions. Thank you so much to our speakers. The calls to action, flexible working, living wage, and targeting those employees that are disproportionately impacted. I think my colleague Annette now is going to post a poll for you to write your feedback. Cormac, any kind of passing word that you might want to offer in the last minute? I know you just chaired the panel.
Yeah, thanks very much, Emma. Very conscious of the time. Just again, say thanks to all the speakers. And also, when Emma and I were planning this event, we were looking at the calls to action, thinking what would make this event a success for us. And for me, it really does come down to if even one organisation on this call decides to take action, make a change based on those. We've heard from Gail and also from the employers what difference this can make. This is an opportunity for us to really do something. The cost of living crisis is directly impacting a huge number of people in the country. So I think there's a real opportunity here for us to make a difference. That's certainly why we do what we do, and it'd be great to hear the actions that come from this. But yeah, thanks very much to everyone for your time today, and yeah, looking forward to hearing what comes. Yeah, yes, Cormac, a real rallying cry. I feel it. I love it. Thank you so much, everybody. I think that we're at time now. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.